day, everyone. Welcome. My name is Efwa Andal. I am part of the APA Communications team, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's virtual workshop, Sesame Street and APA, Integrating Racial Justice into Your Work with Children. Our speakers today are Dr. Maisa Akbar, our Chief Diversity Officer and Interim Chief of Psychology in the Public Interest, and Antonio Freitas, Director of Educational Experiences for U.S. Social Impact at Sesame Workshop. Dr. Akbar will kick us off with a few opening remarks, after which Mr. Freitas will give us a guide through Sesame Street's racial justice resources, and then we'll conclude with a brief Q&A. Please share your thoughts and insights in the chat. We do ask that you keep the conversation constructive, and please submit any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Our panelists will do their best to get to the ones that they can. Okay, Dr. Akbar, over to you.
Thank you, Afua. Welcome, everyone. I am so honored to join you today. Today's turnout shows that psychologists recognize how critical it is to address racial equity in our work with kids and their families. You know, it's important for us to talk about things like systemic racism and how this impacts children from the moment that they are born and creating inequities in health, education, developmental outcomes, and multiple societal determinants of health. Its negative impact on mental health includes increasing depression and anxiety, decreased self-esteem, decreased self-worth, and a host of other psychological maladjustments. As psychologists, it is our responsibility to reposition and ask the question, what happened to you, rather than what's wrong with you? This shifts the conversation from a focus on the individual to the contextual factors and obstacles that affect their well-being. We need to focus on dismantling the systemic barriers that hold our children back, rather than expecting them to simply be resilient in the face of racial adversity. As an adult, I myself struggled with the concept of resilience. While I was able to overcome trauma and obstacles, the reality is that most people will not be able to go beyond survival. The system is just too strong. It's too biased and sometimes very, very overwhelming. While we celebrate children and lift them up, the real work is in dismantling the systems that require them to be resilient in the first place. We should all contribute to resilience rather than putting it on the individual to overcome these obstacles. The assumption is that they must uplift themselves despite messaging from the outside world. Resilience is not just holding your head up high or staying positive in moments of adversity or trying times, but pursuing racial justice is our shared responsibility as adults. This is why I am so glad to see so many of you here and why APA's partnership with Sesame Street is so critical. APA and Sesame Street began this partnership in 2020 with a shared goal of addressing racism, racial trauma, and racial literacy and how it affects kids. As our partnership continues this year, we have brought in our focus to address now mental health in kids ages 2 to 6, which is a key priority for APA given the ongoing youth mental health crisis. Our two organizations bring together a powerful combination of the psychological science behind children's mental health and the storytelling mastery that has brought iconic characters like Elmo and Big Bird and more into the homes, hearts, and minds of millions around the world. APA and a team of subject matter experts help review racial justice resources that are available on the Sesame Street and Communities website. These resources are designed to provide families with the tools that they need to build racial literacy and discuss race-based issues with young children in a meaningful way. So you may be asking yourself the question, why are healthy conversations about race with young kids necessary? Discussions of race and racism are part of racial ethnic socialization, the process by which people develop an understanding of their racial or ethnic identity. They take place in a variety of different forms. Sometimes it's with family, sometimes it's among your peers, sometimes it's because of what you're watching in the media or in the community that you're in. Parents and caregivers intentionally, but I will say sometimes unintentionally, convey messages about the importance of race or ethnicity, the meaning of specific cultural traditions, or the impact of discrimination on bias on their and in their lived experience. This influences children's beliefs about the way that the world works and their repertoire of skills in coping and navigating things like racism and systemic barriers. Psychological science shows talking to children about race and engaging in activities when children are young has been linked to improved academic performance, racial pride, and other positive outcomes. Many of you may be working with parents who have questions about how or even when to talk to children about race, especially when children are really, really young. They may assume that children are not emotionally prepared or ready to handle the complexities of such conversations. But let me tell you, the fact is that it is never too early to engage kids in a discussion about race and ethnicity. Babies notice physical differences like skin color as early as 6 months. And research shows that children can exhibit signs of racial bias by age 4 or 5. As a parent, rather than a researcher or practitioner, this became very real to me with my son. One day he shows up from preschool. He, runs into the kitchen while I'm trying to make a snack for him. And he says, "Mama, Mama." And I turn around and I said, "Yes." And he says, "Did you know that I am orange? You are yellow and daddy is brown?" Yeah, so that was my first understanding at the age of 3 that he's beginning to match those colors that he was trying to master in preschool with his family, and how our shades were now imprinting in his head for him to make determinations about the way that people looked. And in his very developmentally appropriate way, making racial distinctions or distinctions around color. Sidestepping the hard conversation is just not an option. With or without parental intervention, children receive messages about race all of the time. Racism and its effects creep into the spaces where kids live, where they learn, where they play, where they grow. We can start these conversations, as I said, in a developmentally appropriate way that prepares our children to face racism and deal with it constructively, using simple language and terms that children will understand. And for very young children, you can focus on parts of culture that they can see, such as skin tone and hair texture, or just hair in general. Parents of color, unfortunately, do not have the privilege of pretending racism doesn't exist. We need to talk to our children very early on and often about race and racism. We do this not only to prepare them for the racial adversity that they may face, but to instill pride in their heritage and in themselves. However, I want to stress one really important thing, that this responsibility doesn't just fall on parents of color. White parents also have a responsibility to discuss race and racism with their children as well. Parents must make an intentional decision to be anti-racist in their parenting. Children are not going to do this on their own, especially if you don't give them the tools. Racism is not a problem just for people of color. It is a harmful and destructive force that hurts all people, regardless of their racial identity. Systems put in place to maintain racial inequity, such as segregation, discrimination, and unequal access to education, healthcare, ultimately hurts every single person. We must confront one simple fact. History will repeat itself if we refuse to actively disrupt generational cycles. We can do so by telling all kids the truth about racism and encouraging them to value and appreciate racial differences. Look, Our hope is that you will use Sesame Street resources in your work with kids and families to open the door to vital conversations about racism and discrimination. We encourage you to apply these resources in various formats, including in your practice, in counseling, in your teaching techniques, in your training. After all, you know that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to every child and every family because they are all unique. I want to wish you, on behalf of APA, a heartfelt gratitude. I want to wish a heartfelt gratitude to Sesame Street for the collaboration, the innovation, and the mutual respect that we share through our partnership. We look forward to continuing to work together to address youth mental health. Before I turn it over to Sesame Street and to those watching today, I want to thank you for showing up. I know it's not easy. I know teaching children about racial literacy can be daunting and often feel very, very confusing. At times, it may feel like it's insurmountable, but keep pushing forward for change. That's my call to action for you today. In addition to Sesame Street and communities, I encourage you to check out our APA resources on healthy communication about race. Together, we can create a world where there are children that treat each other with dignity, with respect, with love, the love that they deserve, regardless of their race and ethnicity. I want to tell you that I see you. Your work is essential and so appreciated, and your actions absolutely make a difference. I will end by sharing one major highlight of our partnership. You see me smiling because it is my pride and joy. Last summer, I had the incredible opportunity to visit Sesame Street Studios in New York City and shoot a Muppet message featuring none other than Elmo and Wes. Take a look.
Hi, Elmo. Hi, Wes.
Oh, hi, Dr. Akbar.
How was your day?
Elmo and Wes went to the park.
Yeah, and it was fun at first.
Yeah, but then something happened on the playground.
Yeah. And it really hurt our feelings.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. A kid said something unkind about one of our friends because, well, they look different.
Yeah. Oh, and Elmo told his daddy what happened to our friend, and Elmo's daddy helped.
You did the right thing, Elmo. Sometimes when people meet others who don't look like them, their families or their friends, they use unkind words or treat people differently. And that's not fair. After all, our differences are what make each of us special.
Yeah. Oh, Elmo and Wes look different.
Yeah, and we're still friends, and we still play together.
Yeah.
You two are great friends.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Look at the beautiful butterfly.
Yeah, Elmo really loves its colors.
Wow.
Oh, let's follow it.
Good idea.
Talk honestly with your child about racial differences. Let them know that differences create this beautiful, diverse world we live in. From the foods that we eat to the clothes that we wear, your words matter. And you are your child's first teacher. The American Psychological Association and Sesame Street are working together to help families spark important conversations about racism and help them cope with and recover from race-related stress and hurt.
Hey, look.
Dr. Akbar made a new friend.
I guess I did.
Yeah.
I just love that. And now, Antonio, take it over.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Akbar, and thank you to members of the APA team for welcoming Sesame Street and communities into this important conversation. Happy Women's Day, and on behalf of the workshop here in New York City that Dr. Akbar was blessing us with her presence for, we're excited to talk to you today about some of the resources that might be helpful in your work with children and adults in your circle of care. We know that children begin to observe and internalize messages of race at a young age, during a critical time for building one's own identity and sense of self. It's important then for families to feel equipped and comfortable to have conversations about race and racism, and Sesame Workshop is here to help. So in these next few minutes, I want to share with you some of our newest resources from Sesame Street and Communities, this free bilingual platform that includes racial literacy resources designed to give children and their caregivers additional tools to cope with racism and navigate difficult situations as a family. We want kids to know that, as Dr. Akbar said, racism is wrong and that all skin colors, eye shapes, and hair textures are beautiful and to be celebrated. And from the very beginning, Sesame Workshop has modeled inclusivity in Sesame Street's storylines and diverse cast of Muppets, humans, and guest stars. From Roosevelt Franklin, our first Black Muppet, through the years to include Rosita, Cammy, and Lily, a furry friend reflecting food insecurity and homelessness, to even Carly, a Muppet we introduced in 2019 to cope with foster care and parental addiction. We've tried to reflect in our Muppets the identities of everyone across all neighborhoods in the United States. But over the past few years, we've also been hearing from partners and advisors and thought that we should be doing more. So we conducted an identity study in 2019, and we plan to convene advisors to discuss systemic racism and historical trauma. And the overarching principle was that we needed to be explicit, right? We realized that while diversity and inclusion and representation is critical, it's not sufficient. To tackle racism, you have to be bold and explicit. You have to name it. And so we're continuing to define and repeat it so that it is something that kids can understand, recognize when it happens, and most of all, take action as an upstander in their growing identities and communities. We know that race.
I've got to ask you a question.
Of course.
You know, I look at this, and first of all, I had so much fun in the studio. So I know that is just an incredibly dynamic place. But, you know, from your experience, was it difficult to come to the point? I'm looking at that timeline and I see the evolution of this conversation. What did the conversation look like backstage? Like all the stuff that people don't see, right?
Yes.
Like you all grouping together.
Yeah. So, as you sort of mentioned in your question, also in the historical timeline, we started this conversation in 2019, but unfortunately, the information, the conversations that were happening internally, externally with partners like you and so many others actually got put on the back burner when COVID began. And that became sort of the big thing that we had to hustle to. And it typically takes us between 6 and 9 months to create something. And we began creating COVID resources to share out in under 6 weeks that people were doing from home. And so everyone internally had to switch gears and address that. But again, after the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many more, we realized that we need to do even more with a renewed sense of urgency. And that really sort of became for us that rallying cry that we needed to sort of double down on.
Wow. Thank you for that. I just want to make sure people get the insider, not just.
So we know, friends, that racism, along with so many other traumatic experiences, affect nearly half of the American children under the age of 18. That means over 35 million kids have been through at least one adverse childhood experience, with more than 1/3 of those children under the age of 5. But we also know that simple strategies can make a difference in mitigating the effects of some of these traumatic experiences. And together with all of you and everyone doing this work with children and families across the United States, we're learning that the more that we can help everyone in a family take small steps, the more we can increase chances of successful outcomes in school and in life. And so to that end, Sesame Street and Communities builds on the more than 50-year commitment to serving and learning from families and providers, working to build smarter, stronger, kinder kids, one relationship at a time. And the ABCs of Racial Literacy is this new educational curriculum created under the Coming Together initiative here at the workshop to give families the knowledge, the skills, and the awareness needed to talk thoughtfully about racism. This includes giving necessary vocabulary and language to have these conversations. And it's our hope that these tools will help focus everyone in the community, but specifically children of color and their families, to cope with racism and racial trauma, while also providing for members of all communities clarity on the actions we can take to support equitable conversations that see people for who they are on the inside and out. And so to give you a sense of what this looks like in context, I'm going to share with you one more video from two of our newest Muppets, Wes and Eli, that are connected to talking about racial literacy with their friend Elmo.
You know, Wes became my best friend when I was in the studio, so I can't wait to see what he's got.
You guys go way back. Yeah,
we do go way back.
All right, this looks good.
Dad, I think today's perfect.
A full day weather forecast of sunny skies and smiles.
Hi, Mr. Elijah.
Hi,
Elmo.
What are you two doing?
Dad and I are taking a break from our nature walk.
Yep, and we stop for a moment to enjoy the colorful leaves.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Elmo, the leaves are falling.
Yeah. Look. This leaf is red like Elmo's fur. And this leaf is brown like Wes's skin.
Good observation, Elmo.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Elmo has a question.
Oh, what is it, Elmo?
Elmo wants to know why Wes's skin is brown.
Oh, I know why, Elmo. My mom and dad told me. It's because of melanin. Right, Dad?
That's right.
Melanin?
Well, melanin is something that we each have inside our bodies that make the outside of our bodies the skin color that it is. It also gives us our eye and our hair color.
Oh, and our fur color?
Yes, that's right, exactly, Elmo.
Oh, but if we all have melanin, why are we different colors? Like, why is Mr. Elijah's skin a darker brown than Russell's skin?
Oh, that's a good question, Elmo. Well, it's because the more melanin you have, the darker your skin looks. The color of our skin is an important part of who we are. But we should all know that it's okay that we all look different in so very many ways.
Oh, well, Elmo's fur is red and soft.
Oh, and my hair is black and curly.
Things on the outside, like our skin color, our hair texture, our noses, our mouths and eyes, make us who we are. Many people call this race. But even though we look different, we're all part of the human race.
Isn't it cool, Elmo?
Very cool.
Look at the leaves. What do you two see?
Oh, Elmo sees leaves that are all different colors.
And the different colors look really cool together.
Yes, those leaves came from one amazing tree. Standing strong, its branches like arms stretch wide, with leaves of many different colors, side by side swaying together in the breeze.
Oh, like this? Wow.
Yeah.
When people of all colors come together, we stand strong, like this tree.
Yeah. Oh, look, Elmo. This leaf looks just like us. Two colors, side by side.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful together.
Antonio, what I loved about this video is that it provided the context, right? I wish as a parent I had this when my son, who's now much older, busted into the kitchen and was like, because really what he was telling me is like, I see these differences and I'm wondering if it's okay for us to be different shades. And also like, what is that about, Mama? Like, why are we different shades? And this does such a good job of explaining a complicated word like melanin, but giving it context, right? Like, go ahead.
I just really appreciate in your part of that conversation that you had with the child, this sense that like you could hear in that almost a socialized, like, can I talk about color? There's an adult, when we talk about brave conversations, the brave in my mind really sort of has to do with the adults connected to how we sort of understand children developmentally asking questions about life and curiosity and the people around them. It is the social descriptions that we as adults have placed on that make it something that feels a little bit sort of difficult and sticky.
Yeah. And it's the beginning of that process, right? Like what I saw later on when he was 7 and 8 is that he started to make distinctions about like, well, why does that person speak this language and I speak that language? Why do they have an accent? Am I a certain ethnicity? What does it mean that I'm from the Caribbean, right? These questions were going to start to come up anyway. And that was really the foundational, this color conversation was the foundational, piece that he had in order to develop that broader understanding.
Yeah. And, connected to that, and what we really sort of hope to be underscored in this first launch of the initiative was that we had these big 3 anchoring concepts that we wanted to tether to every video, to every book, to every story. The first was this idea that everyone in a community can grow in their racial literacy with shared language of terms and ideas. The second was that the part of community building includes being able to talk, listen, and communicate through conflict with empathy, perspective taking, and racial comeback strategies are part of that process. And the third and final concept was that we all play a role in creating a community where everyone can be seen and celebrated for who we are on the inside and out. So in that video, we had the chance to meet one of the newest members of Sesame Street, Wes and his father, Elijah, who I know, again, you go way back with. The family moved to Sesame Street because Mom, Debbie, and Dad, Elijah, found great jobs there. Eli is a meteorologist, and he knew that this would be a new place to start a new role and also give his child the opportunity to grow with some friends, furry and new. So this is sort of how we begin to start to key into who those identities and people are. Moving now into what these resources look like in context, we've been able to take this big emblem of all of the resources reflected into Sesame Street and communities. And on our racial justice topic page, you'll see, if you just click into racial justice and scroll down, there's a wealth of other topics and things that you can see here. But what we've been able to do in this conversation is really just sort of group them into 3 specific bundles for all of you. Resources to share with children, resources to share with families, and resources to share with other providers. And so I want to just spend a few minutes naming for all of you what these resources could look like in your own contexts. We know that children are not colorblind and that they first notice differences in race and start assigning value to those differences in infancy. Children also start forming their own sense of identity at very young ages, and building this positive sense then of identity is critical to all children's healthy developments. And valuing the identities of others can help kids grow into more embracing and caring adults. And so the principles on this page, like Beautiful Me, are great ways for children to share and to show who they are on the inside and out. You might use one of these as an intake session when you're getting to know a family, or invite them to tell their own story, to talk about who they live with and even where they live. We also know that singing is a great way to celebrate our own identities, and the principal page, I Am Somebody, includes lyrics to our song Giant that also has a great music video and can offer kids phrases, lyrics, and conversation starters to get them thinking about what it means for them to be strong in their own skin. We also know that part of the role that we play as caring adults in the lives of children we engage with is to not only create meaningful moments in our time with them, but to also provide resources that prepare them for the world. So in these different resources you have reflected on your screen, the first one, Breathe, Feel, Share, we were able to work with a subject matter expert and address a racial comeback strategy when there was a racially unjust moment that a child was experiencing. In this specific case, Wes was talking to Abby and his father about a painful incident in which someone made fun of his lunch, curry chicken, his favorite. And so we talked about sort of what happens in experiences similar to that and how through a parent and child conversations, people might be able to talk about painful moments, which may include cultural and racial differences. The second piece is also about racial literacy, which you saw first in that initial topic video that we saw. And we have this book here called Outside Inside that gives Wes and his dad, Elijah, a chance to walk around Sesame Street and meet some of his newest friends. And in this, we hope that kids can start to learn about how they would use their own words to describe themselves, how they would engage with concepts in their own lives and the lives of other families, and understand that we can all connect and become friends with those who look and don't look, sound, or act like us, and that because of that, we all matter equally.
I love that, Antonia, because sometimes sitting in that cafeteria, and when you bring food from your home country of origin, and other kids are having things that perhaps are different or more Americanized in terms of food, kids can sometimes feel embarrassed or shameful of, the foods that are tied to their heritage or their culture. In fact, I saw a family when I was in practice, and there was a child that really struggled with this. And one of the suggestions that I made was, well, what about trading so that maybe the kids are curious and they don't know how to ask you, what it is that you're eating. And it became this entire trading. I probably should have asked the school first, but it became this whole, trading of different taste buds and different foods. So it's so great to have resources to be able to explain how to have these conversations with kids. Yeah. That's where it begins, right?
Yeah, and I think also what I appreciate about your answer is like you are giving very concretized action steps. Often what we talk about with providers is great, we understand this concept of what does it actually look like in practice? And so you saying, so you're not yucking someone's yum, you're taking what they're eating and inviting yourself to have it and become a larger conversation, a sort of broader meal, makes it something that is a lived in meaningful moment for everyone in that lunch. It's great. Friends, great. Keeping these conversations going, we want to share very quickly resources to share with caregivers and families. And again, we know that building a positive sense of identity is critical to all child's development. And then because of that, fostering open conversations about race and identity is important for, as Dr. Akbar said, all adults of all backgrounds to do with children in their lives. And so throughout our topic page on racial justice, we've included several documentary style short videos along with the articles that you have flagged here. And each of the different videos is about 7 to 8 minutes long, and it includes from a wealth of different cultural backgrounds, different families talking to their children about what it means to be engaged in a world that supports everyone in it. And so I want to just share with you a couple minutes from our first video on the Christophersons. And this is a video specifically with a white identified family that is highlighting the importance of allyship. And you can see this resource, like all of our resources, includes a big idea at the top, just a single sentence summary that gives you a sense of what the text is all about, the actual asset itself that you can press play on. And then also, if you're not quite sure what to do with this, what to say before, during, or after, we've also included some gently recommended scripts on what you can do before, as, and after you watch the video. So we're just going to watch the first few minutes and then come back together.
There's a bunch of yellows in there. Yeah, get that bright one.
Okay, that's our family, Dad.
That's pretty good.
Goldie, Mama, and you.
I am Jillian Christofferson, and I'm Gray and Golden's mom.
And I'm Dan Christofferson. I'm Gray and Golden's dad.
What about some of the things that we say before we go to bed at night? Gray is kind.
Gray is kind.
Gray is smart.
Gray is smart.
So everybody in the world has different eyes, right? They have different eye colors, different eye shapes.
Blue, brown, black.
Yeah.
Yeah, differences can be special.
Yeah. Growing up in Japan, I grew up as a minority, but I was a privileged minority. There was no escaping that I was white growing up in a country of people that really didn't look like me. When I first moved to America, I was really naive about what my culture was going to mean in a different context, surrounded by white people who saw me and assumed that I was the same as them. The part where I have to consider my own white identity is the part that's really new for me, and think about where I fit as a productive part of anti-racism in raising white children.
Okay,
Try this guy.
Want to try these ones?
They're really good.
So these are foods that I grew up eating in Japan, snacks that I ate all the time.
When I was younger, I didn't get to try a bunch of different snacks from all over the world, so having Mama introduce me to these snacks has been really cool. I grew up in Utah, mostly white people, not a lot of diversity. I didn't really understand how homogenous it was until I started to travel, and where I started experiencing more diversity in language, in culture, in skin color, and realizing what kind of impact that had on me. Us having a little snack together can make you think about all of the different stories around food all over the planet.
So we're going to go ahead and stop there. There's some great moments in this, but in the interest of time and also leaving some breadcrumbs so y'all can continue to jump back into this after today's conversation. This video, along with, again, the several other videos that we have connected to documentaries, really, again, try to sort of show the broad expanse of cultures, identities, communities, and what family looks like, and how people engage in brave discussions connected to race, identity, and how to celebrate who people are on the inside and out. The second component of things that you might be considering sharing with caregivers and families are digital activities that we call interactive games. And these are things that can be responsibly used on any type of device, be that tablets, computers, or even cell phones. And we have two different games here. The first is called I Am Me, and this includes activities that families can do to not only create arts and crafts versions of themselves, but also to participate in community building events for the members of Sesame Street that get a chance to explain who they are, and using descriptive words, the children playing the games can match that identity. The second game, which is a little bit more adult facing, is called Let's Talk About Race. It's featured in English and in Spanish and has 5 different categories of questions and age appropriate answers that young children have connected to race and identity. So y'all, we're rounding the bend. I'm trying to not speak too fast, but make sure you have everything that you need. In this last bucket, these are resources to continue our own level of continued growth and professional development. And as we continue to hear and continue to believe, racism is all of our problems, and we all need to do our part to stand up against it. But sometimes talking about or even thinking about racism can be a daunting task for many of us. Fear of making mistakes or offering and offending others can hold people back from diving into this important topic. But there are things that we can all do to grow a little bit more. And this heart work can equip parents, caregivers, and everyone working with families to stand up against racism together. So in the workshops that you see reflected on your screen, families are invited to share and watch short videos and consider questions to help them remember how they might reflect and practice the ideas and strategies in their own lives. We know that some of these questions might not be easy to answer, but that's okay, right? The hard work is worth it, and that's why we want people to engage in it. We've had a series of great questions as we begin to close out this conversation. And I want to thank you all for being able to share some of these prior to our dialogue and give you some of the quick answers before our last few minutes with Dr. Akbar and any questions you might have from this immediate phone call. The first connected to what opportunities are there to partner? How do we respond across the divided political landscape? What are the best practices in supporting caregivers? How do we support children in affirming their wide variety of identities? And what are there opportunities for us to continue to professionally develop? The first thing is that you are all already valuable members of the Sesame family. As Dr. Akbar framed at the beginning of this conversation, we have been partners for a few years, and so Sesame Street and Communities continues to connect with you and other national organizations in a variety of ways, like conferences, virtual presentations, and trainings. But if you want to, you can always stay connected to us by looking at our digital platform, ssic.org, and by following us online across social media. When it comes to things like a divided landscape here and across the United States, we know that we can't always control what is happening in the world around us, but we can help guide children and adults in their lives through the ways that we respond to these challenges. So as adults, we teach children how to behave in our communities and our cultural groups. And in that same way, we help them learn to lead, to share toys, to respond when they're angry, and we also teach them about differences. So then if we stay quiet when a child witnesses racism, our silence can actually teach them that these interactions are okay. So instead, we can help children take care of themselves, stand strong in their own skin, and together, as allies to one another, lead to honor and celebrate differences. We have a couple of resources that speak to this specific concept. That includes that racial comeback strategy, Breathe, Feel, Share, the song with Alan, Proud of Your Eyes, and then Spanish is My Superpower, with Rosita and her friend talking about a difficult experience they had at a local grocery store. When it comes to best practices to supporting caregivers, we often think about ways that we can share, model, and talk about other families having honest conversations about race, and how this can then inspire new ideas for talking about this topic at home. And so again, as mentioned with that Christofferson video, we have 4 others that are specifically highlighting families from a wide variety of backstories. While the Christoffersons is a white family that leans into allyship and what that looks like, talking about ways with the Maranias is a Latinx family where we've been able to highlight the idea of colorism within a family, and to Dr. Akbar's experience at the beginning of this call, really how to have that conversation when there are different shades in the same family, and how to talk about those differences to celebrate them. Talking about race with the Klutes also talks about the connectedness to land, harmony, and indigenous peoples that live through that. And we have a wealth of other resources and conversation starters connected to each and every family. As we think about supporting children with a wide variety of different ethnicities, cultures, identities, and specialties on the inside and outside, we want to make sure to underscore this idea that for children to develop healthy and complete identities, they have to integrate a positive understanding of their race, ethnicity, and culture, right? And so this involves really celebrating who we are by using things like songs and printables. So that coloring page printable me gives children a chance to color on their own and describe for themselves who they are. And the song Giant includes some of those lyrics and mantra style quotations that people can use to remember how to be strong in their own skin. And finally, as we think about our own growth and development, it's think a little bit more about how we understand racial literacy and make that an active component on each and every conversation that we have with a client. So being able to familiarize ourselves with what is racial literacy as an article, and then also Never Too Young, Ages and Stages of Racial Understanding, give you, with the providers, the caregivers, and the families that you work with, a developmental breakdown of how children understand color, identity, and groups as they grow. So with that, I want to thank y'all for making time for us to share and pass it back to Dr. Akbar and the team at APA.
Thank you so much, Antonio. What a wealth of information. Now we just want to be able to address a few questions. We have a couple minutes left so that we can, support with any resources or to address any of your concerns or questions that you may have given the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Maisa. We'll transition to Q&A at this time.
And one question that I'm seeing, Dr. Akbar, that I would love to sort of follow you on is how can we talk with families about addressing this without making children feel like they are targeted or singled out?
Yeah, I think that this is a developmental progression. There's really no one time where you have this conversation and then it ends. Children are going to have a variety of different interactions at school, in the playground, during family events, in a variety of different settings. This is why it's so important, and what we've reinforced throughout this conversation is for you as the parent or a caregiver of your child to begin having these conversations and giving children agency to feel comfortable around these conversations. What we tend to see is that when children feel extremely uncomfortable or unprepared, this is when you tend to see other behaviors sort of pop out. So I know that oftentimes it can feel complicated or like it's too soon. And we're just going to continue to encourage you to begin to have those conversations. If you're a practitioner that's working with a family, I know that sometimes conversations around race can be complicated or difficult. But to center those conversations and to be able to model for parents the best way in order to do that, and using the resources, in lieu of just talking therapy would be a great way to demonstrate to children so that they can practice how to have these tough, courageous, and difficult conversations. Last thing I'll say, Antonio, it's hard for us as adults to have these conversations, right? So, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we tend to not socialize our children to have a level of comfortability. We need to begin to do that. The more awareness and insight that we have, the more responsible we become to make sure that our children are well equipped to have these conversations with each other and with others.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to answer two quick questions that came up that might be specific to Sesame. The first is, what is an example of a racial comeback? That's a great question. I apologize. I threw that phrase out and did not actually talk about it. So that video, Breathe, Feel, Share, illustrates something that we got from a subject matter expert whose name is Howard Stevenson, who talked about this idea of having children being able to breathe in and get a sense of what actually happened, where they're feeling it in their body, where they notice that, and then being able to share that with someone else to game plan a specific strategy to overcome, to process, and then to get past and to re-engage with it. So we think of this as both a self-regulation strategy, but also a way to engage back with the community, specifically if harms have been done. The second question is about how we support a diverse array of families, specifically LGBTQIA families. This is an important topic for Sesame Street, and it's one that we've been making slow, quiet progress on. And so I can't speak too much about it right now, but I will tell you that we're working in things right now. So continue to light those candles, and we'll continue to do that work.
Wonderful. Well, let's thank our wonderful presenters today. You guys did an amazing job. I want to say thank you to everybody who was able to attend today. We will be sending follow-up resources in an email along with the recording, so please look for that. We also will encourage you to please take our follow-up survey. It's a very brief survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. And as Antonio might have hinted, we have more stuff coming around children's mental health. So please look out for a webinar we'll be hosting in June with Sesame Street one more time. So thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, y'all.